Welcome to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, coming straight to you from Rock and Roll, USA, covering the latest and greatest in educational leadership trends, news, and awesomeness for principals all over the world. Now, here are your hosts, the boss, John Ross, and the Doctor of Proctors, Nick Indeglio.
Welcome back to the Rockstar Principles Podcast, and we have a killer segment that's about to take place. The instant we started recording, the heater came back on, so that's already going to drive me crazy. I'm a bastard about sound quality. We're back in the lair, the Ross lair, the basement.
And can we point out that it's like 10 degrees outside, so that's why the heat's kicking on.
It might be colder than 10 degrees.
Do have to keep my family warm. Your sound quality has to suffer at the expense of my comfort of my family. I'm sorry.
What does this world come to? We have a great program for you tonight, and we're about to talk about a controversial article that's going to rock your socks, baby. So here we go. We're just going to launch right into it. I'm going to give you the summary, and then the rock stars are going to respond. This article was from the Detroit Free Press, written by Greg Toppo of USA Today. And it focused around a Harris poll that took place this fall that looked to talk about and find out about school dynamics, the first of its kind. First, they polled 2,250 adults. That is a good representative sample. It's a good number. What they did, they asked these adults to compare their perceptions of school dynamics when they were kids versus school dynamics today with their own children and in the public eye. Here's what they found. Fewer adults believe that teachers have respect for parents and students. Even fewer adults believe that parents and students respect teachers. How many from that poll? Students having respect from teachers. These adults felt that when they were kids, 79% of them felt that students respected teachers. Now, in today's society, only 31% of those polled believe that students respect their teachers. Now, in terms of the question, parents respecting teachers. When the respondents were kids, they felt that 91% of parents had respect for teachers. Today, only 49% of these adults believe that parents respect teachers. Now, from those results, a plethora of people were interviewed and asked about this. The large majority of teachers, the opinion was, well, parents are making excuses for their kids these days. It's changed. Arnold Fedge, from the Public Advocacy for Kids, took a different spin on it. He felt that the overall community feels like they've lost control of large parts of institutions that are important to their lives. He points out, among other groups, that polls that have done the similar type of research for different types of government have found the same thing. Trust, respect for government institutions are down as well. Finally, one LA teacher from Los Angeles, LA, obviously, his name is Michael Ulmer, said, "It's all about expectations and modeling behavior." He doesn't believe that kids are any less respectful today than they were years ago. So there it is. That's the summary. Bottom line, people today feel that teachers don't respect parents. People today feel that parents and students don't respect teachers. John, what do you think?
Well, first, I'm glad that we established that LA is in Los Angeles. I just want to make sure that we clarified that.
Hey, we might have stupid people listening to our podcast. Got to clarify.
Or stupid podcasters trying to podcast. This falls into the same category of a lot of things. How much it drives me nuts when people talk about the kids today and the schools today. But first, let me say, if you survey 2,000 some odd people
2,200
on any topic and ask them, was it better when you were younger or is it better now? You're going to see, I think, the same results. You know what I mean? If you ask them if television was better, you ask them if the communities were better, if you ask them if government was better, any topic, people are going to say that. I just think people have this affinity for when they were younger. When I was a kid, school was different. When I was a child, this is the way things were done. So I think, first of all, that needs to be pointed out. Second of all, I'm blown away at the idea that people would say that teachers respect students less now than when we were kids. Because when I was a kid, teachers tolerated us. I mean, there was a handful of teachers that I felt genuinely cared about us and respected us as people. There was very few teachers, at least in my experience. It was the exception for there to be teachers that I really felt respected me. I mean, that's a strong word if you talk about the word respect.
Uh-huh.
And I see the way our teachers treat kids now in 2014, and I think it's a way larger majority. Can we do better? Absolutely, we can do better. But I think it's a much larger segment of the teacher population that respects kids compared to when we were younger. So that's the only one that I would say to me really jumps out as being completely and just totally skewed or ridiculous or whatever word you want to use. Everything else, yeah. Parent respect for teachers has gone down. Um, Student respect for teachers has gone down. It's I think that's has a lot to do with our society in general. I like how they did point out that that people feel the same way about the government. The respect for, I think we've talked before about the
Yeah.
respect for people in office and respect for the presidency and the way we treat our elected officials. Is it any wonder that we wind up with some of the dopes that we wind up with in elected office? Because the really, truly, genuinely good public servants are really few and far between now compared to the way it used to be. Well, the people that are teachers, it's people think twice. People that are really bright, educated, passionate people think twice about going into the profession now because of the way teachers are treated, and the way teachers are viewed, and how you're under the gun all the time, under the microscope all the time. So I can understand why that came out the way that it did.
And it speaks to the people who are considering entering the profession, which is something we talked about in an upcoming segment that you'll hear,
Yeah.
which is something new for the podcast. But why would people pursue a career in education when there's no respect for the profession?
Mhm.
And that becomes a real question that is beyond the principalship. I mean, we can do our part, but um, how do you have the best? Let's go back to Finland for a minute.
Yeah.
What did Finland do? In the 70s, they were in the bottom tier of all educational institutions on the planet.
Right.
They dumped all of their money into education. They took the top tier students, and those are the people who became teachers. That's who teaches in Finland.
Right.
And it's paid for, and they pay for them to get master's degree, and they pay for professional development, and they don't teach anywhere near as much as American teachers teach during the day. Almost half their day is dedicated towards PD, collaborative inquiry, working together. In the teaching part, when they go in front of the classroom, they're fresh, they're ready, they're the best that there is.
Right.
So it's no question we're running into these issues today.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody for a second think that we're in any way slighting teachers today,
No.
or saying that.
No.
I mean, our teachers today do so much more with so much less. There used to be just this pipeline to schools from the government, and now they're much more
Funnel.
critical. The funding of schools is reduced, and even the funding that they give you is, they go over with a fine tooth comb where you spend it. How many times have we talked to one another about, as building principals, when we want to spend money in a particular area, the number of I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed in order to do so. So, and again, that's all justified. I mean, I understand why it is, but my point is that, the teachers that we have really are doing so much more. How often do you hear about teachers buying their own supplies and
Yep.
buying lunches for kids? I mean, that never happened. At least I don't ever remember that happening. I mean, I certainly didn't go to an affluent school, public school when I was a kid. I know that there were kids in school with us that were down on their luck financially, but I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me like teachers do so much more now, so much more, just in so many different areas, not just so much more trying to connect with kids in the classroom, but they do so much more with trying to, help kids beyond the walls of the classroom.
And the expectations are that much higher. This survey talked about respect, However, I wish we would have had some questions in a survey about expectations. What would parents say about the expectations parents had for schools back when they were kids
Right.
versus the expectations held now? And let me give you a very specific example of this. This is a true story that happened this week at our school. An eighth grade student, had been placed residential, so some very serious situation, suicide attempts, suicidal
Mm-hmm.
ideations. The discharge from the residential institution included recommendations at the end of the report. The recommendation on the report was supervision is required between the end of the school day and the time the parent finishes work, because if the student is left alone, there's a chance they might try to commit suicide.
Right.
The parent called the school, faxed over the discharge summary, and said, "How are you going to watch my kid from 3 o'clock until 5 o'clock when I finish work?" To which our response was, "We're not going to. We don't do that. We have tutoring a couple days a week. We do.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we have after school." He said, "Well, no. The recommendation said the school should do this." No, we don't do that. That's called babysitting. You can hire
Yep.
someone to do that, etc. Of course, we said it more professionally than
Right.
that. The response from this parent, and I'm quoting directly, the response was, "Well, I guess I'll just go buy a coffin now because you won't do anything about this." So there it is, it's right in
Yeah.
front of you. I know it's one example,
Right.
but I see it more and more.
I just think we just, I mean, this is the last thing I want to say about it is I just feel that this all speaks to this idea that I have about how we feel in general, human beings feel, but particularly Americans, I really feel. And this is kind of what one of the things that annoys me about the situation in our country right now. That we always feel like we're the victims and that we have things worse and that things, are so much more difficult for ourselves compared to others. Um, this that I know I know what you're talking about with your situation, and the fact of the matter is, and I know you would agree with this, is that that's the hand we're dealt now in
Hmm.
2014. I mean, this comes with the territory. So I know when you say that, you're not saying it as a bitch session. You're using it as an
Yeah.
example of what we have to deal with, and that's just the fact of the matter. You know what I mean? This is the hand we're dealt. This is the business we've chosen. We use that Godfather line all the time, joking with each other, and it's true. I mean, this is the field we've gotten into. We know about the accountability. We know about the high stakes testing. We know about being under the gun and under the microscope, as I said earlier. So, it's nice to talk about it and get it off of our chest, but we can't fall in love with those problems. We have to recognize them as being issues and figure out ways to deal with them and do what we can do to help deal with them and move on. And I think this survey, the results of this survey, as I said, are a reflection of kind of how we see things as a country, about how things used to be better. And I would think if you survey teachers, a lot of them would say similar things about how they feel less respected and they feel, that their situation's rougher than what it used to be. So
Yeah. Well,
I don't know. I think there's a much larger issue here than just this, but it's a good. I guess it's a good leaping off point for the conversation.
Well, and the other piece to that is, there's then your segment of your teachers. You're going to have teachers who embrace the
Sure.
challenge, and there's going
Right.
to be teachers who use it as an excuse.
Right.
And from the literature, from the research, one of my favorites, of course, but keep quoting Doug Reeves' 90-90-90 research.
Yeah.
Inner city schools where you have 90% free reduced lunch, 90% minority, every disadvantage you could possibly have, when they're successful, 90% or higher achievement, one of the main factors is a culture among the staff that accepts responsibility for
Sure.
everything.
Right.
For everything.
Yep.
No
That's it.
excuses.
That's it.
So you need that to be, and that goes for anything.
Yeah. Any field, any job, everybody has their good sides and the bad sides to their chosen profession. And as you said, the ones that are successful are the ones that recognize that it's not always going to be wine and roses, that there's going to be challenges, there's going to be things that we have to tackle. And yes, there is a time and place for, commiserating about that, but eventually you have to get over it, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and face the problem head on and deal with it.
There also comes a time, and I don't want to belabor the point, where we have to go onto the offensive as well. I hear a lot of principals and administrators talk about we're always hamstringed. We can
Mm-hmm.
never do certain things. There's
Mm-hmm.
certain things we can never say to parents.
Right.
And I think there is a time and a place where
Sure.
you've got to take the chance
Sure.
if necessary.
Yeah, we shouldn't be punching bags. I mean,
Right.
we can take, we can take a little bit of it, but we shouldn't be constant. We shouldn't be the stable punching bag. We should be the punching bags that kind of swing when they're hit and get move a little bit and maybe miss one of the shots every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, but and I don't know, did they make punching bags that punch back? Because every once in a while. I mean, I know, and sometimes it's been inappropriate, but it sure does feel good after I do it. I mean, there have been times in my professional career where I've said things to parents that I knew, I probably shouldn't have, but it felt good, and sometimes you got to do that. I mean, you deal with the repercussions. You deal with having to apologize to them later on or whatever. You know what I mean? You do what you got to do. But yeah, sometimes you need to do that. So,
all right, well,
don't lose respect for me for admitting to that. But yeah, I do. I have. There have been times where I've said things that parents said. As soon as I said it, I knew right away it was the wrong thing to say.
There's a really good story that someday, I don't know what the statute of limitations is for podcasting, but at some point you are going to tell the Thanksgiving cell phone story. But we have to save that at this point.
Oh, probably. I'll tell that story. That's my favorite story. I have zero regret in that story. That's one of my all-time favorite stories. That's as my assistant principal at the time, who was there when that happened, said he's going to tell that story at my retirement dinner, a long time from now. But that's an epic, legendary story that I acquired a few years ago. So when we have time,
if you see us in person, if you see us in person, or
we'll see who's really listening. Maybe if somebody says, "Oh, we really want to hear that story," somebody mentions it on Twitter, we want to hear that. It was actually Christmas. It was actually winter break.
Was it Christmas?
It was winter break cell phone story. The winter break cell phone story. So if anybody tweets that or shoots us an email or calls us on our phone number,
it happens,
and says, "Hey, I was listening to the podcast. I really want to hear John's winter break cell phone story." I think the statute. I mean, I could do it without using names, so
that's true.
I could tell the story, anytime. I thoroughly enjoy retelling that story. And each time I tell it, it gets a little better because I throw a little bit more.
Of course, yeah. You pile a little more sand and you stand up a little higher on the chair for that one.
Exactly.
All right, we'll be right back with more of whatever it is we're doing.
The Rockstar Principles podcast, Dr. Nick.
That's it.
And now a word from our fake sponsors. But we'd really love if they were our real sponsors. Seriously, we would love it.
Playing with power.
Punch Out by Nintendo.
Play with power.
11 world-class contenders. Take them down with your controller, beat them all, and you've got a shot at Tyson's title.
Power.
But for that, you've got to beat Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's Punch Out from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power.
Welcome back to the Rockstar Principles podcast. And once again, it is time for the Maxwell University of Leadership. Yes, students, we are once again in the distinguished halls and classrooms of the Maxwell University of Leadership to discuss the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership as proposed by John Maxwell in his outstanding leadership book from years ago. And we've worked our way up to number 5 of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. And number 5 is the law of addition. But not in terms of mathematics now. Don't jump the gun. But actually, this law is leaders add value by serving others. Maxwell goes on to talk about how leadership isn't how far we advance ourselves, but it's about how far we can advance others. So that whole servant's heart, doing things for others, trying your best to make a difference in the lives of others in a positive way. Or as Maxwell says, are you making things better for the people who follow you? This is one that I hold near and dear to my heart. One of the things that hopefully people see as something that I try to do. I really view our responsibility as a principal is doing just that, serving our teachers, serving our students, parents, community, school board members, taxpayers, however you want to look at it. We are in a service business. We're a service industry.
We're public servants.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like in a business area where the whole idea of the customer being right, I wouldn't say that we would, agree that the customer is always right in this service industry, but I will say that I will do everything within my power to make our customers happy. And again, our customers being teachers or students or parents, and sometimes those needs, those wants might be in conflict with one another. So you're not necessarily going to be able to make everybody happy. And I think that's something we've touched on before about how being a leader isn't about making everybody happy, about how that breeds mediocrity. But you're certainly trying to add to others. And even if I've had parents specifically tell me that even though they disagreed with the outcome of something, that they felt as though they had an opportunity to get their point across. They felt as though the school was coming from the right place. The school was trying to do what the school felt was best. And that, they were going to, for the time, agree to disagree, or we would revisit something later. Or I just think parents in particular are much more likely to come at you from a respectful angle if they feel as though you're trying to do what's best for the school and not trying to serve, any one particular agenda. So yeah, serving others and helping others and trying to promote others, it's certainly the law of addition is an important area.
Yeah, it's the notion of servant leadership, and go back as far in history as you want. Look at Saint Francis. What was his whole mission? The prayer of Saint Francis, and spend some time look at that. More importantly, since that was a long time ago, not that Saint Francis is any less important than Jim Collins, but Jim Collins did a lot of research, and we've talked again and again on the podcast about level 5 leadership, the characteristics of level 5 leaders. That's the top level Collins identifies in leadership. And these are people who have run successful companies that have outperformed everyone else, that have stood the test of time. And these leaders have common characteristics. Now, we've talked about some of those before, one of the main ones being humility. However, one of the big characteristics is exactly what Maxwell's saying here. And that characteristic is the boss, the leader, whatever, prepares the company for succession, prepares the company for when he, she is gone, which means it's not about the personality of the leader. It's not about the ego of the leader, the id, the ego, whatever, however you want to term it. It's about the solvency and the future success of the company. Bottom line, and I'll challenge any principal out there who has a huge ego.
Here we go. Nick's throwing out the challenge.
Putting the challenge out. Now think about this, because I know we've all had the thought at least, and that's fair. I mean, I know I've had the thought where when you leave a place and go to the next place, you're kind of looking behind every once in a while, checking in on them to see, are they doing any better without me? Are they doing, how are things going over there?
Talking about
Ego. But the truth of the matter is, if you are able to not go out on your own terms all the time, but if you're able to leave properly, and that doesn't always happen in the public sector.
Yeah.
But if you've put the ego aside, if you've spent the time to build your company, that's leadership. If you're one of the people who really thrives on your own ego, who really believes that there's no way this organization can survive once I'm gone, then you haven't done anything to build the organization. You haven't prepared it properly, and you can be as successful, as the perception you create, but the bottom line is you failed. Take anyone to task on that. Anyone.
Yeah, I would not argue with that at all. I don't know. I just feel like my thoughts on it would just be redundant, other than just to say that if you're getting in a position of leadership because you want others to serve you, you're not going to last very long.
Right.
I mean, that mindset, that whole mindset, works in 0.5% of organizations. You know what I mean? There are some of the huge, maybe Fortune 500 large organizations where the person at the top, wants to be able to be the one that's being served, and that might work. But you look at some of the outstanding, up and coming, the 21st century organizations, the Googles and the Apples and companies like that, where The people that are in the leadership position are doing things for those in their organization. I think you mentioned something from Maxwell talking about Costco.
Yeah.
And how Costco pays their employees a larger amount, takes care of their employees a little bit better than their major competitor.
Yep.
So, businesses like that, people like that have that kind of mindset, especially in 2014, I think are the businesses that are going to be more successful and have a longevity to them, as opposed to businesses that are more short-sighted and genuinely don't care about their those that work for them.
Yeah, and the Costco example, talks about the CEO, who, of course, the name is now escaping me, Singleton or Sinise or something similar to that.
Gary Sinise?
Gary Sinise. He knows all his people by their first names, and it's reminiscent of the Southwest example. That's always the shining example. Herb Kelleher.
Southwest, yeah.
And his cowboy approach. But the bottom line is the servant leadership approach. And my favorite thing about Southwest, and this definitely tells the tale in terms of servant leadership, they refuse to call human resources human resources. They call it the people department.
Huh.
So, I mean, that's
How about like Disney World? They're not employees in Disney World. They're cast members.
Cast members, yep.
So things like that, I think, make people feel, more valued. They make people feel more important to the organization. You take a gigantic organization like Disney. And the thing, it's funny, is we're thinking about this, and I'm kind of getting a little leadership lesson myself, because even you take organizations like Costco, okay, or like a Disney, or like the ones that we're talking about. And the funny thing about it is that no matter how great those organizations are, right, there's people that can't stand them.
Absolutely.
There's people out there that can't stand Disney. There's people out there that can't stand Costco. There's people out there that don't like Google, that don't like Apple, right? So what's the leadership lesson in that for me?
Can't make everyone happy.
As a school, that, trying to relate that to being a school, there's going to be people that don't like the way you run your school.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be people that badmouth your school. Do you think, as a school, do you think you're better than Apple? As a school, do you think you're better than Disney? You know what I mean? Even as great and awesome and wonderful as people think organizations like that are, they're still the detractors. They're still people that, so you take the best organization, whatever you may be thinking in your head as you're listening to my voice, as being the greatest organization you can think of, there's people that have an issue with that and can't stand that organization for whatever reason. So as a school and as a school leader, you can't get down on yourself because there's people that detract from you, people that don't like the way you run your school or don't like your school, or, you know what I mean? Like, no matter how many times I have great and positive interactions with parents who thank me and tell me how, wonderful a job we're doing as a school, it hurts when you get that one parent that takes a shot, and that one parent that says, well, everybody in the community can't stand your school, and and it's hard to not give that, to give that comment weight, but it's really, really true. I don't know. I'm just having kind of a moment here thinking about it, that, there's similarities there, I think, that we can learn from.
Well, and don't forget, and this is for the beginning, the novice, the aspiring principals, leaders out there. There's a great lesson that I learned a long time ago, and I always ask this question. Whenever one of your staff members or a parent or anyone uses an absolute term, like John just gave the example, and says, everyone in the community feels this way. Your response, very politely, is going to be, could you tell me who everyone is? Can I have their names? Can you have them contact me?
Right.
Is everyone?
Yeah.
Or is it three people who live next door to you?
Because now we're really going to spiral, because the one that happens the most often is, well, I know I'm not the only parent that feels this way.
Yep.
Well, ma'am, you're the only one who's called me to say that.
Yeah.
Well, I know that's not true. No, I'm telling you the truth. No one else has called me to say that. Well, I've talked to other parents, and there's a lot of other parents that feel this way. Well, I don't know what to tell you. Please tell them
back
to call
to those
me.
parents, and please have them call me or email me. Or bring them in. We'll bring them in, and we'll have that
I know we're really
conversation.
off topic now. We really birdwalked this, but that's one of my favorite things. We can make a list of favorite things that parents do,
say.
And that's right up there. As soon as somebody leads, because that's usually what they do, they'll lead with that.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Mr. Ross, I want to talk to you about something, and I just want you to know, I'm not the only parent who feels this way.
Yes.
Oh, why are you starting with that? You know what I mean? Why are you immediately on the defensive saying something like that? That's a tell right there, if there ever was one.
Well, that's a classic teacher one too, and it's a quick diffuse for you. So again, for the new leaders, when a teacher comes into your office and says,
Yeah, that's right.
everyone on the staff is
Yeah.
upset about how you handled that meeting.
Right.
Okay,
Oh,
here's what
that's great.
Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go. You can either give me their names now.
Right.
Can you give me their names,
Yeah.
or go? In fact, go back right now. Get them. Bring them
Mhm.
back here.
Right.
And if you can is everyone 3 people, 1 person? Is everyone the 120 staff members? Just
Right.
I just want to be specific about this.
I love it. That's so true.
It is one of the
Oh.
best. Final
Anyway.
final thought on the Jim Collins
Yeah.
piece, because you go back to that research and the leaders who are successful with those Fortune 500 companies, they are servant leaders. I mean, they are
Right.
humble and they do
Right.
prepare for succession. And again, it's all about getting the right people on the bus. And if you have a large organization, let's look at your Fortune 500s. They're big
Mhm.
companies. You're not going to have 100% of your employees be awesome. Okay.
Right.
Southwest puts so much money into hiring the right people that it's very difficult for them to have detractors in the organization, and they tend to leave if that happens.
Yep.
And they don't pay much more than anyone else. It's that people like working there.
Yeah.
Salaries are relevant after a certain point. It's more about contentment. But the point here is the right people on the bus, for the most part, get the people in the right seats. But then if you can't weed out some of those bad people, you don't want those bad people to like you. So if you had a
That's right.
100% approval rating,
Right.
something's wrong,
Yep.
because then you're just trying to play to the lowest denominator and play to everyone, and then you're not making the hard decisions and getting things done. So
Too true, my friend. Too true. Well, thank you, Mr. Maxwell, for rule number 5 there, the law of addition. And we'll work our way up through number 21 as we do. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at these 21 irrefutable laws. It's a great book for leaders, and something, especially if you're an aspiring leader. But even if you're in a position now, something you should certainly check out. So
yeah, buy his book on Amazon, leave a review, and say the Rockstar Principles.
that's where you
sent
heard it, right? The Rockstar
Yeah.
Principles podcast, the ones that sent you there. And Nick is getting a text.
And
So
when
that's a good
when you're
time.
doing that, why not just go to iTunes and leave us a review?
So you go on Amazon, you buy the book, and as long as you're online, you go on iTunes. Well, you would have already gotten the podcast from iTunes. But if you haven't left a review yet, be sure to do that too.
Or Stitcher. You could do it on Stitcher.
Yeah.
You could leave it.
I was going to leave the silence there because I know you were reading that text message while I was talking. So I just stopped abruptly to allow for the silence. Yeah.
Let me hang a little bit there.
All
Yeah,
right.
leave a review on Stitcher. How about that one?
Just come on, hook us up, do something for us. I mean, we're not getting paid for this. This is a service we're doing for free, So a couple nice things. Would it kill you people to say something nice about us? I just want everyone to like us.
5-star
Oh wait,
review.
that goes against what I was just saying,
Yeah,
doesn't
but
it?
this is different. It's totally different. It's totally cool in this case.
All right, we'll be right back with more of the Rockstar Principles podcast.
And now a word from our fake sponsors. But we'd really love if they were our real sponsors. Seriously, we would love it.
I'd like an Atari 2600 system, please, and everything that goes with it.
Everything? You sure want everything?
I want everything.
Now you're getting your low price, up to $30 in rebate offers, and a free pack.
Is that everything?
It's not everything. You can get nearly 300 different cartridges.
300?
That's nothing.
It's something.
But it's not everything. Soon there'll be a voice module, trackball, remote control joysticks, and a computer keyboard.
Amazing.
It's amazing, but it's not everything.
It's not everything.
Soon there'll be educational games, too.
Is that everything?
That's everything. For now.
For now?
The Atari 2600.
Now get up to $30 in rebate offers plus a free Pac-Man.
Welcome back, the Rockstar Principles podcast, and we have an extra special segment tonight. We are branching out a little bit and trying to be a little more worldly. So, we are featuring a segment called Breakfast with Galli.
I was waiting to see how you ended that. Breakfast with...
So, I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to tell you who we interviewed, where we interviewed them, and why you're going to hear waitresses and tables clanging and all kinds of stuff.
So we've been talking, Nick and I have been talking about getting, there's a couple of people that we have connections with that we've been talking about getting on our podcast. And this was one of mine, a gentleman by the name of Joe Galli. If you know me, you probably know or have heard of him. Mr. Galli is he's my Mickey Goldmill. He's my my Mr. Miyagi, Rocky's coach, Mickey. He's been my mentor. He hired me out of college for my first teaching job. promoted me to his assistant principal. And then when he moved up to become superintendent, he turned over his school to me as principal of Drexel Hill Middle School back in 2001. So he taught for several years, started teaching in '69. I think he became an assistant principal in the late '70s, early '80s. And then he moved on to be principal. You'll hear him mention he was principal of Hershey Middle School out in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Yes, the Hershey, Pennsylvania. And that was in the early 1980s. And then he came back to Drexel Hill to become principal. And then, as I said, eventually superintendent in the same school district, in Upper Darby School District. And he retired in 2009 after 40 years of service in public education and has been enjoying his retirement. But he's got a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience, and I'm sure you're not going to agree with everything that he says, but just like any veteran person, I feel there's a lot to be learned from. Somebody who has been in public education in the, started in the late 60s, all through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s. I think there's something to be said for somebody that has that wealth of knowledge and that kind of experience. So we thought it'd be cool to get Joe to sit down. We've been trying to explain to him exactly what a podcast is.
Unsuccessfully, I might add.
I've just gotten him to start texting. So that gives you an idea. If you know how much Nick and I love technology. Joe's not exactly a technology guru. He's just started texting, so I've gotten him. He got an iPhone recently, and he's texting now. So he really doesn't, I think, fully understand what podcasting is or what our Twitter feed is or anything like that.
Maybe by 2022?
Maybe.
We'll get a phone call. Hey, guys!
Yeah, I just stumbled on this podcast. They have the same name as what you guys got, Rockstar. But anyway, so Joe agreed to sit down with us. We were on our way to a student competition that Nick and I had to go to or wanted to go to. And we stopped, and I brought my son, Cameron, and Nick brought his son, his assistant principal, Rob. And the five of us sat down, Cameron and Rob Farina, who's Nick's assistant principal, and Nick and myself and Joe Galli at this restaurant near Joe's house in Malvern, Pennsylvania. It's called the King Street Grill. If you're, again, familiar with the area, they've got great breakfast food. And we just kind of started picking his brain, talking about education and the state of education. And we thought it'd be pretty cool to record it and give you a listen. And maybe we can comment or talk about, later on. As I said, there'll be some things that you might agree with, some things you'll disagree with. But I think overall, you'll find it's a pretty interesting conversation and some interesting points that Mr. Galli makes. So
the first, full disclosure, I think it's fair to say, the first segment that you'll hear today is the first of 4 segments.
Right.
This would be the least controversial of all of them.
Yeah, it gets a little more dicey as we go along.
We definitely, and we're not going to shy away from any of that.
No.
We will, when we get to the other segments, we will try to bleep out some of the profanity.
Well, and also some names. I mean, you'll hear in this
yeah.
segment we actually edited out a couple of names being used to protect the innocent. But as we said, overall, it's some good stuff and some things I think people will find interesting to listen to. So we're going to have a couple segments of it, and let us know what you think about the restaurant style too. I mean, we kind of think it's neat to hear the coffee being poured, and I think actually the end of this segment is when our food comes out.
Right.
So we kind of end abruptly mid-conversation there. It's because our food came out. But it's kind of interesting listening back to it to hear the sounds of the diner in the background. It's kind of funny. So,
and to be totally fair, we always try to plug our guests. So you can follow Joe Galli on Twitter. No, you can't.
No, you can't.
Hey,
you
maybe
can't
you
find
can
him on Facebook.
You can look him up on Facebook. No, you can't do that either. He might have a pager.
No,
from the 90s.
Yeah. He's using smoke signals. 3 puffs.
CB radio, AM radio frequency.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enjoy. Here we go. Joe Galli, Rob Farina.
Breakfast with Mr. Galli.
Breakfast. And I said, what about breakfast, Mr. Galli?
Oh my God. Will you edit that out?
No, I would keep that in there.
That's a good question these days because I think public education is really changing fast. faster than anybody can try to keep up with it in terms of the job responsibilities. And that goes for teachers, guidance counselors, assistant principals, superintendents. Like I was just talking to and it's funny because this is a sore subject for you, I know, but I was congratulating him on having been chosen as a national school to watch. And his principal and the team are going down to Washington, D.C. sometime in late February, March, or April or something like that to get recognition, not just on the state level, but on the national level from that Schools to Watch program. And he started pontificating about, how fabulous the middle school program is and how it's, like the highlight of the school district for him. It's far out and away better than his elementary schools and better than his high school. And he wishes his elementary schools and his high school could get the kind of recognition that his middle school has gotten. And, he just, time and time again, he just kept saying it's the staff and the principal, it's the staff and the principal, it's the staff and the principal. And the relationship that they have with the kids and the parents. If it wasn't for the extremely obvious to everyone, the relationship, the positive relationship that the staff and the principal and other administrators have with the parents and the kids of that school, this never would have happened. It just never could have happened. And he told me they had a dozen evaluators there on the team. Because I said, I understand that program sends a bunch of people in there on the evaluation team, and I understand the rubric is pretty hard to get through to get that evaluation and to win that award. And he said, yeah, it really is. He said, we were very surprised at the number of evaluators that they sent in there for 2 full days. They were there for 2 full days, and he said, we had a dozen people in the school, and they talked to every single solitary teacher. And I said, everyone? He said, everyone. Every single teacher they interviewed. And they interviewed any and all parents that wanted to come on and talk to them. They never said, well, we're out of time, we can't talk to these people. So he attributed much of their success to relationships. And, I still go back to that. I've said that for my whole career, that the number one R in education is not reading, writing, or arithmetic. It's relationships. And without relationships, you're going nowhere. You can forget it. It goes back to the old story of the math teacher up in Hershey Middle School who threw the girl out of class the morning she was writing a note from herself to another girl explaining why she was crying in class because her dog got hit by a car right in front of her eyes before she went to school. And the teacher, instead of trying to be understanding and see what was in the note, why are you crying,
just saw that there was
grabbed the note. Algebra was more important. And she even said it. When she later came down to my office, she said to me, algebra is more important than any of this. I said, oh, well, that's the way you see it. And obviously the way you see it isn't getting you very far with this kid and her family.
Right.
And this was a really, really fantastic kid. One of the real strong families in Hershey, in the community. And her mother and father were very, very well-educated people, second and third degree people. Doctor at the medical center. Mother was a marketing agent, and very, very well-educated people. And the whole family. Her brothers who went before her were really smart in school. But, this kid opened the door to go out to get on the bus, and the dog ran out across the lawn, ran out in the street, got hit by a car right while she's standing there 6:30 in the morning.
That morning.
That morning. So it was enough just to get that kid to go to school that day. Right. Just think about Cameron. Just think about how you would feel if you're ready to go to school, you're walking out to get the bus, and your dog gets hit by a car and killed right in front of you. You feel like going to school that day very much? No. You're probably very distraught. You're crying. You're looking for your mother. You're looking for your father, somebody to comfort you, somebody to make you try to feel better through this awful thing. But she managed to get herself to school that day. She sits down in class crying, and a girlfriend on the other side of the classroom is like, what's wrong? Mouthing what's wrong. So she proceeds to write a note. She gets caught. And the note gets all ripped up in shreds and thrown out of class and sent down for discipline. What's wrong with that picture? And the problem is, I hate to say this, but the problem as I see it is, there's a lot of teachers in this country that still feel that way and still act that way, even today. Even when we know how important it is to build a relationship with a kid before you can teach them anything. Anything. You know. But there's a lot of teachers that don't get that. There's a lot of administrators that don't get that. And because they don't get that, they pound their head against the walls and wonder why they're not successful. And
I think it's probably got something to do with society in general. I mean, I think society's first reaction when kids are doing things is like a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, kids, shrugging, shaking their heads and being disgusted without trying to figure out why they're doing what they're doing. They just attribute it to, this generation or these kids or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that's why there's going to be people in our profession that feel that way too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Interesting part too, and I agree, relationships are the key. How then do we build a relationship with that teacher? And how do we try to get that teacher to turn around? That's, to me, the most challenging thing.
I think you do it exactly the same way you do it with kids. And for 40 years, I've said the same thing back when I was studying for my own degrees at Villanova for my master's degree.
Thank you. Sure. I'll be back with tea.
Thanks.
Somebody actually gave me a great dissertation that was written, and you know me, I'm not much for PhD or DED dissertations, because I don't think they're worth their weight in salt. But this particular one from a person at the University of Pennsylvania actually wrote a dissertation, and the dissertation was wrapped around this whole concept of, how do you teach children? What does it take to be able to touch a person's life, and how do you reach out to them in order to get there? And the whole dissertation was basically called Reach, Touch, Teach. And the whole philosophy, the very simple, very, very simple philosophy of that is, you can't teach a person anything until you touch that person's life. And you can't touch that person's life until you reach out to them. And too often we have public school educators that are waiting for the children to reach out to them. They're waiting for the kid to come to where they are. You got to come to where I am. This is my belief system. This is what I think is important as your teacher. This is how I feel about certain things going on in society. And when you come to me, to where I am, then we'll be able to have a relationship, and we'll try to work out the teaching end of this whole thing. There's these demands that the teachers make that you have to come on my ground. Teenagers are very, very, little kids are teacher pleasers. They're parent pleasers. They will come to you. They will, whatever you want them to be, they want to make you happy, so they'll come to you. But when a child starts to go through adolescent development, they're testing everything, and they want to find out who really they are as an individual in this world. Who am I? I know I'm from my parents, but I'm not my father. I'm not my mother. I'm not my grandparents. Who am I? Who am I as a person in this society? What am I all about? And they test everything. They start asking questions. People don't like that. Parents don't like it. Teachers don't like it. When kids start asking questions, when kids, want to establish their own independence and their own relevance in this world. And it takes a teacher who's willing to reach out to a kid like that. And if they won't reach out, you're not going to get very far with teaching those kids. The easiest kids to teach are the ones that reach to you.
Yep.
They're the easiest ones to teach. Anybody can teach the AP kids. Anybody can teach the gifted kids. Anybody in the world. Try to teach a kid who comes from an impoverished home, an impoverished family, whose parents haven't done the right things in this kid's lifetime, either by them or in society. And, they live in an awful home situation with everything you can imagine. They have very poor health conditions in their home. They don't eat right, they don't sleep right, suffer from all kinds of medical illnesses, and they come and sit in your classroom. And you want them to reach out to you. You want them to come to your common ground. Come on. Is that a realistic expectation? I don't think so.
But I think people can acquire that. I think teachers can acquire that knowledge.
Sure.
I mean, I think the good news about that is that people, because I feel like earlier in my career, I was more of a you come to me person. And
I think almost all of us are.
Yeah.
I think when we come out of college and, we have certain views of what our philosophy of education is, almost all of us are. And I think a lot of it has to do with your own student teaching experience.
Right.
Where was your student teaching experience? What kind of a situation did you have? We always used to talk about the people coming in for the special education interviews. They would come in for the special education interviews and I'd say, well, this is the job. The job is working with 15 socially, emotionally disturbed pre-adolescents who throw stuff all around the room, kick people, bite people, curse at people, slam doors, run out of the classroom, run up and down the halls, start fights and everything. What was your student teaching experience? Well, I worked with 5 and 6 year old trainable mentally retarded children in a life skills situation whose whole day was all about love, kissing and hugging and having a wonderful day. And I said, so you think you're prepared to do this? What makes you think your student teaching experience prepared you to do this? They're not. They're not prepared. And then they want to know, well, why am I not successful doing this?
Speak from experience on that one.
For those of you who's doing that.
No, I just mean the middle school emotional support. It's a different world.
I read somewhere that called what you just described chicken feed education. That we're too guilty of chicken feed education. We throw the seeds out. If they pick it up, it's on them, not our responsibility.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to that old philosophy. It goes, I taught it.
Right.
Right. Hey, I taught the lesson. Yeah, but look at their results on the tests. Their results are horrible. It's not my fault.
Yeah.
I taught it.
Why didn't they learn it?
Yeah. I taught it. Well,
I've literally heard that said. I've literally heard teachers say it.
Hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds of times.
I have tutoring sessions. When you find out the tutoring session's exactly the same instruction as the class. Well, if they get it during class time, how are they going to get it being told to them the same way, louder and slower?
Right.
Switch it up.
Because I did it louder and slower.
And
That's
I
not
took
helping.
and I took my lunch to do it.
And you better appreciate that I took my lunch to do it.
Those potatoes look good.
Yeah, they have good one for us.
Very welcome.
Thanks for helping RSP top the charts in the Edu podcast world. Keep it real with Twisted Steel and School Appeal.